Elohim talks sometimes at length about the idea of stance. The warrior talks about stance, the energetic position you take on a subject or on a life. Now, it often comes up around habits and around thinking that's obsessive. I'm going to take a stance that is unacceptable. My stance is that I won't continue to repeat that thought. My stance is that I know that's not helpful. Therefore, I will not keep doing it in an effort to somehow comfort myself with familiar suffering or habitual response. So we've talked about this idea of stance before, and what we'd like to do tonight is to help start to formulate your sort of 2014 stance, right? We'll use the fact that the calendar has turned to give you an opportunity to groom your 2014 stance. Now, always at the end of one calendar year and the beginning of the other, we talk about what you're going to leave behind, what you left in 2013, what you decided isn't worth bringing forward. But we haven't talked very much yet about your stance on 2014 and the time you're in. What's acceptable and what's not. What you're willing to fool around with and what you're not willing to fool around with anymore. And we would like very much for you to seriously consider this going forward. What is your stance? Where's the line in the sand that you've drawn with yourselves? I will not. I won't. It's not allowed. It is not serving me. There's nothing to be gained. Now, we've made this very obvious when we talk about things like you say, I don't have enough money to pay XYZ bill. It doesn't help to think that 50,000 times. Once, twice, 10 times, okay, you've done it. You've milked all that thinking it will get you, right? We've talked about this. That's a thought that you all should be clear on. So that's an obvious in the moment sort of stance kind of thing. But in general, overall, what is your stance? Elohim has said you're being trained to be energetic leaders. You are emanational leaders. You have the opportunity to set the tone for the surrounding area that you live in, to set an energetic tone that reaches around the planet. How strict are you being with what you're willing to emanate? How clear are you on your stance about what is acceptable? How disciplined are you about letting fear be in charge? Veronica's got this theory she's working with right now, and it's very rich for her. And it's helping her quite a lot. And we're going to share it with you because we think it will help you as well. And that's everybody's just trying to face and fix their fears. Whatever comes up, it's somebody facing and fixing fears to the best of their ability, whatever their ability might be. And as you look into the world and you see people behaving in ways that you do not like, yet you can't understand, you can't work with, you can't figure out, that you're tempted to judge, that you're tempted to look down upon, that you're tempted to have an uncomfortable relationship with, what happens if you say, oh, that person's afraid? They're afraid. And in them, their behavior is all they've got to offer that fear. That's in their toolbox. You all open your toolbox. There's hundreds of tools in there. Some we've given you, some you've picked up along the way, some you've created for yourselves. You're very skilled. You're very empowered. Other people who are human at this time, facing fears, have nothing to fall back upon except what society has told them works, which is victimhood primarily. When you see a person, whatever they're doing, if you imagine that person is just fixing their fears the best they know how. Now, does that look like unconsciousness? Sure it does. Of course it does. Does that look like $8 billion isn't enough? I've got to go for the $9 billion? Of course it does. Does their fear have to make sense to you in order for it to be a real fear? Not at all. In fact, more often than not, their fears won't make sense to you all. We can say something like to you, oh, you got a flat tire in the freeway, that was your first choice, and you can say yes. Not very many people know how to do that yet. So if someone gets a flat tire on the freeway and they're afraid really bad that all sorts of bad things are now going to happen to them, and they act out on those fears and they act out on that insecurity and anxiety, that right there, that's called being human. And you have to work to not be the reactive type, the reactive version of human, Homo sapiens. This is all the work we do. All the work we're doing with you is saying, I'm afraid and I want to interact with that fear in a way that doesn't perpetuate more fear. So when you find yourself in a situation, remember that meeting when Elohim had you say a fear and they went da-da-da dead, da-da-da dead, da-da-da dead? That's the point they were trying to make, is that underneath anything that's going on with you, there is some fear that you are trying to fix. And you have a lot of ways to fix your fears that don't emanate out negative, low vibrational states. Not everybody does, so you need to be the ones doing that. And when you see someone, at least this is how it's been for Veronica, she sees someone doing something that she doesn't understand, and she says, oh, they're fixing a fear. I may not know what that fear is, but they're fixing a fear. It allows her to have compassion for them, even if she cannot understand why they're doing what they do. It came up. Sometimes you have these big corporations. You don't agree with the business policies they do. Why in the world would they do X, Y, Z? Because the people that are in charge are afraid of a lot of things, and that action comforts them in some capacity. World domination to comfort a fear, it's been done many times, or attempted at least. You have many historical figures who thought, I'll just be in charge of everything and then I won't be afraid anymore. Now, maybe they said it as, I'll be in charge of anything, everything, and no one will bother me, or no one will mess with me, or I'll feel like a superhero, or. But underneath all those labels, at the bottom line of all of it is, I'm afraid. Primarily afraid of dying. For some people, it's afraid of suffering and then dying. And suffering can look like pain and illness, or it can look like humiliation. But whatever your version of suffering is, suffering and then dying is the motivating force of I want to avoid that. Because I don't want to suffer and die. Your survival instinct is very, very strong. We talk to you about it all the time. We talk to you about the survival instinct all the time because it is a constant companion. Well, what we want to get it through to you guys tonight is that when you approach the world with tools, then when you feel fear, you are skilled at interacting with that fear in a conscious way that doesn't emanate more fear into the world. Everybody's fixing their fears, folks. In their own way, they're fixing their fears. It doesn't have to make sense to you for you to be able to have compassion. Now, compassion isn't something the council talks about very often, because too often compassion is actually victimizing the other person. But when you see that they are experiencing something that you're experiencing, which is fear, you can have compassion for the challenge that it is for the Homo sapiens to confront fear. You know that. And that is, other than breathing, the only thing we've seen you all have in common. The challenge of facing fear. And the challenge of facing fear gracefully is amazing. So when you see things on Facebook and the internet and the news, and when you're talking to somebody in the grocery store, see what it feels like to say, they're fixing a fear. I know what my fears feel like. I know how hard it is to fix mine. They're doing what they can to fix their fear. And just because my fears, I don't need $9 billion to try to fix my fear, doesn't mean that somehow I'm better than the way they're fixing their fear. We're all fixing fears. And so if you can find a way to have a genuine compassion, which means I see myself in you, and find a way to inform that person that there are other ways to fix fears than by generating more fear. That's a powerful task. Now, the council's been at it for 11 years, 12 years. So it's not something that happens overnight for most people. But you are examples of it through the way you live. When something happens to you and you don't find more fear to interact with it, instead you interact with it from consciousness. Then you emanate, right? It all goes together. But just remember, see if you can practice this. See what it does for you when you take the stance of, instead of going, what assholes, why are they doing X, Y, Z? Don't they care about the planet? Don't they care about X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z? Instead of all that, if you just say, that person's afraid. That person has a fear and this is how they're trying to fix it. Is there another way to comfort that person? Is there another way? It will give you a different stance. It will give you a different perspective. It will help you see how clearly you're emanating, because you'll get to see how often your behavior is based on fixing a fear as well, and see how often you meet that fear with another fear, or do you meet it with a tool to transform it. This is the levels thing that Elohim went through with you guys last time, is a way to not respond with fear to a fear. A step-by-step way. We got books full of tools to help you not respond with fear to fear. That's our point here. That's why we say the choice for consciousness. That's why we say the consciousness-based operating system instead of the fear-based operating system. Those aren't just descriptive words. They're actually telling you what's going on and what we're doing about it. Okay, we're good, Elohim, for you. Good night.